We are taking a break from our normal programming to enjoy the holidays. But in the meantime, Speculative Sandbox presents the 12 Days of Tropes. Each episode is a secret until you open it, just like a present. And who knows, maybe you'll see one of these tropes fully analyzed with a guest in the future. A little disclaimer, this episode contains some mystery spoilers. When I was 10 years old, I wrote scripts for my friends to act out during lunch on the playground. Yes, I was that kid. Murder mysteries were a common plot, the classic kind, where a group of characters are brought together for a dinner party before someone is mysteriously and dramatically murdered. And just like any young writer, I pulled from what I knew, pop culture. And pop culture told me frequently that either the maid did it or the butler. The butler or maid are always there, but they're generally overlooked in favor of the main cast of characters. It's easy to hide the murderer amongst the staff. They have accessibility to every room, every object, every person. Of course, they would know about secret passageways and trapdoors. Also, can you really blame them? They have a relatable motive. Maybe they've worked for an abusive boss for years. There's a lot to be said about the socio-economic commentary of a story when the murderer comes from a perceived lower class. According to tvtropes.org, the butler did it is commonly believed to be coined by mystery author Roberts Reinhardt in her 1930s novel, The Door. However, this trope was already known and criticized 2 years earlier, according to S.S. Van Dyne's 1928 essay, 20 Rules for Writing Detective Stories. However, that hasn't stopped some very well-known mystery writers from using it, including Edgar Allan Poe and Arthur Conan Doyle. I guess that just goes to show that even if you write an opinion piece back in the 20s on what you consider to be good writing, that doesn't stop future generations from completely ignoring you. Sherlock Holmes is guilty of it in The Musgrave Ritual, although there was no murder, just theft. In The Hounds of Baskerville, the staff are primary suspects and later found to be guilty of enabling the fugitive. And finally, in A Study in Scarlet, the cab driver did it. Speaking of cab driver, in the 1949 series Batman and Robin, the valet was the surprise villain. And for a more recent example, the movie Knives Out plays with this trope. Marta is a nurse to the murder victim, but her character fills the servant role amongst a cast of social elites. Now, what about the real world? Can this trope happen in real life? Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, yes. Archibald Hall, also known as Roy Fontaine, was a Scottish serial killer and thief. He became known as the Killer Butler, or the Monster Butler, after committing crimes while working in service to members of the British aristocracy throughout the 70s. At the time of his death in 2002, he was the oldest person serving a whole life tariff in prison. With a lengthy history of pinning murder on the help, how can writers evolve this trope? Readers and audiences seem almost ready for it. So is it even possible to avoid? How would you approach this trope? Leave your comments on our Instagram and Twitter. Speculative Sandbox is a volunteer-run podcast that relies on the collaboration of fellow creators like you. Join the conversation and participate in fun polls and questionnaires on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Interested in being in a future episode? Our DMs are open, or you can email speculativesandbox@gmail.com.